Everyone. Welcome to the 227th meeting of the Audit Committee, Tuesday, November the 5th. Can I get a roll call by the chair, please?
Yes, I will note that Trustee Nikozison is online with Trustees Wilson, Watson, and Wabi present.
Thank you. There are no comments by the chair. Can we get the external audit, Clifton Lawson Allen?
Yes, so we have Andrew Zabel from Clifton Lawson Allen. Tim's not here, he's stuck in traffic. He'll be here later. So he's going to present the financial package for FY24.
Thank you. My name is Andrew Zabel, Tim mentioned. I am a principal with Clifton Larson Allen. I help lead our state and local government practice here in St. Louis. I work with a lot of utilities, electric, water, sewer, gas utilities throughout the U.S. So this will be a quick presentation going over the results of the June 30th, 2024 financial statement audit. So if you want to, and if anybody has any questions at any point in time, feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, just let me know. So this will be a quick executive summary. This is going to be in line with what I presented back in April, but it goes over the scope of what our services are. So we issue opinion on the annual comprehensive financial report. That's effectively the financial statements. We also issue a report on the single audit. A single audit includes a report on internal controls over financial reporting, so the preparation of the financial statements, as well as your internal controls related to compliance over how you spent federal money, because the feds have certain compliance rules that you're required to follow. And so we go through and we test that. The next one is the agreed upon procedures report. If you want to go back up to the previous page. This is a report that's required by Missouri Solid Waste Management. We also issue an in relation to opinion. So MSD has a fund financial statements. A fund financial statements is on a different basis of accounting. So we issue an opinion on the relationship of those financial statements related to the annual comprehensive report. Whoever's controlling the screen, if you want to go back to the previous page. We also have help with bond parity reporting, and reports are required whenever you guys go through a bond issuance. And then the last item is this, the required communications to those charged with governance. So we have completed the audit. We have issued a report. Our report's actually dated today. We've also completed our other reports that I've mentioned. The results of our report's an unmodified opinion, or unmodified opinion. That's the cleanest possible opinion you can get. We don't have any findings as it relates to things that need to be included within the single audit. So you might have significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. We don't have any of those. We provided feedbacks, observations to management, but none of those are significant that are required to be communicated. Those are just options and things that we might see from a best practice perspective. The federal programs that we audited during the year was the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So this was funding that was passed through to you from the state of Missouri. And then the last item, the other program that we tested was the capitalization grants for Clean Water Sewers Revolving Fund. So we tested the large majority of your federal money that you received. Let's see, moving on to the next page. So these are some of the required communications that were required to communicate to those charged with governance. Overall, we continue to have a great relationship and collaboration with the management team. They're always responsive. You know, this audit went well this year. If you remember, about a year ago, we actually did this presentation in December. The management team has gone through a period of implementing Oracle Fusion, which was last year. And then in the prior 2 years, they've also had significant implementation and changes in new accounting standards. So the team has kind of weathered that. Now they're on kind of a very even keel run rate as far as work is concerned. So they're able to get through our audit requests as well as maintain and do their day jobs. You know, some significant or non-recurring transactions. There was a bond issuance in FY24. There was actually a bond issuance subsequent to the financial statement issuance, which we disclosed in the financial statements as a subsequent event. There was some new federal funding, the state and local fiscal recovery funds. And then in addition to that, if you look in the single audit report, there was a correction related to that's reported on your schedule of federal expenditures. In the prior period, there's about $744,000 worth of expenditures that were overstated, and this was corrected in the current period. Effectively, there was a match requirement associated with those state and local fiscal recovery funds, which MSD in the prior period put the entire amount of the expenditures and didn't exclude the portion that they were required to match. Going on to the next page, just the last item here is we did have one uncorrected misstatement. We usually don't have any corrected or uncorrected misstatements. This year we had one. There was about $12.38 million worth of contributed capital that was recognized as revenue in fiscal year 24, but really the revenue should have been recognized in prior periods. Prior periods meaning 2023. It was ultimately missed simply because management was going through the Oracle Fusion implementation. They got some additional data, additional information that they identified when they were closing the fiscal year 24 reports. As a result of that, they recognized this revenue in the current period. As a result, current period revenue is overstated by $12.3 million. This isn't something material to the financial statements. This is also a non-cash item. So it's not something that we felt like was necessary to restate any prior period financial statements. No new accounting standards were adopted during 2024, and there are some new accounting standards in the well. None will be as significant as what the team just had to go through in the past 2 years. So those are the results of our audit procedures and our audit work for June 30, 2024. But overall, I think you guys should applaud Marion and his team for a job well done.
Thank you, Andrew. This is my turn, guys. So next we're going to go over the internal audit presentation. If you guys want to grab this presentation, we'll go over the internal audit report. So opening up to slide 2. So District utilizes a third-party service provider to manage and operate the billing call center. It's referred to as the billing contact center up at the Project Clear website. There is a toll-free number at the website. You can see the number there. You can also, through that number, you can also call our operations call center for a SUBAC, and I'll talk about that later down in the bottom half right here of the report. So the third party basically provides the following services: a call center with customer service representatives. That's the person answering the phones, basically. They also provide collection services, which we were not aware of when we started this audit. This includes outbound calls, skip tracing efforts. It's basically one last effort to collect on some of those accounts that have already been through our collections process. And actually, it actually works pretty well. We were surprised. They also provide an IVR, or interactive voice response system, for handling the customer calls that are received through the toll-free number. The IVR menu options, when you call it, basically there's 3 options. First of all, if you need to report a sewer emergency, we want to get that taken care of. So option 1 is you hit 1, and it's routed directly to our operations call center, which is operated by district personnel. It's a completely different call center. We're actually finishing up an audit on that call center as I speak now. We'll have that report probably for a couple months. If you're calling about a question about your account, you got a billing issue, you don't understand your bill, that's routed directly to the billing CSR team. They answer your questions. If you're calling just to make a payment, that call is routed to the IVR payment system. So you can make a payment over the phone. You use your debit card, use your credit card through that IVR system. So you move on to slide 3. So this is a new area of audit for us. We have not audited this area before, but we tend to keep it in the rotation. I think it's an area that we need to hit every 3-4 years. I think it's that important. A little background on this contract. It's a little convoluted. I try to keep it as simple as possible. It dates back to 2014, but was extended in 2017 from the original end date to an end date of 12/31/27. So it has a few more years on the contract. Now, the original contract was with Orcom and Vertex Business Services, I should call it. Now, Orcom owned VBS, so they're related parties. Orcon then and now provides and maintains our billing system. It's one of those systems that we access through the cloud that I've showed you guys in our previous audits. Now, VBS at the time operated the call center. Now, since that original contract, we've seen a few equity firms purchase the call center operations. The first was Renewal in May of 2017, then Continuum in September of 2023. And then within the past few months, there's been a new agreement entered where Everrise has agreed to purchase the call center operations as well. I guess the one good thing throughout this, since Renewal took over in 2017, the personnel and management group has basically remained consistent. They've stayed on. And this is what is expected with the Everrise purchase as well. Now, Marion and Todd Osbacher have been monitoring the proceedings for this purchase. Obviously we want to protect our interests, make sure everything's okay, and the contract looks okay. So they've been following it pretty closely. Any questions? Slide 4. So next couple slides, I'm going to go over the pricing and overall costs. Current pricing as September 2024. One thing I want to point out, on each line, you'll see at the end of each line, there's a number in bold. That was the price as of August 24. There is a cost of living adjustment within the contract based on a consumer price index. So in September, all the prices went up by 2.5%. Now, finance monitors this. They go through it. They check it when the prices are increased by the third party. So currently, the CSR productive hour, the CS hours, we get charged basically $63 an hour. Now, for every IVR payment, we get charged 61 cents per payment. And for the outbound collection services, it's $63 per hour. There is a commission on the collections, which is 18%. Now, that is actually split between Orcom, which provides the billing system, and the call center provider. Each one gets 9%.
Todd, what percentage of
I'm sorry?
Sorry about that. Good morning. What percentage of collections go to the collection, or what percentage of revenues go through this collection system of our overall fees?
I'm not sure.
Let's see if we can rephrase it. So of all the dollars we collect,
Right.
how much are going through this?
Oh, you know the answer to that? It's a pretty small amount.
Yeah.
You mean you're asking how much we collect through IVR? As far as percentage, I'm not, I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, what about dollar amounts?
Oh, I got that on next page,
Okay.
I think. Well, I don't know. I don't have that. I have what it cost us on the next page, which you could. I don't have the dollars. No, I don't. I had to look that up. I'll get back to you on that. Let you know what.
So they collected $85,000 is what it looks like.
Oh, no. That's the.
That's the collect, but that's what we're paying the
That's what we're
commissions
paying.
on.
Yeah, for collections.
And that's what we're paying the commissions on.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right,
Is that
right.
the commissions, or is that,
I'm sorry.
the commissions, the 85,000?
Yeah, right. That's the 9% that we pay to the
Oh,
call
that's the
center.
nine.
The commission.
Yes. So again, the commissions are
Wait.
split. I'm sorry.
It says it doesn't include it includes the IVR.
But the IVR is just where somebody is going in and over the phone making a payment. So we pay a fee or a nominal fee for every time they make a payment. So it's basically 61 cents per payment through the IVR. So every time somebody makes a payment, they charge us 61 cents per individual payment. The collections is where we're going out to collect bad debt. So, and they charge us a commission on that amount. That makes sense, guys?
I'm still confused. So we've got 3 functions here.
Yes, I'm sorry.
the customer service requests, right? And then the IVR payments and then the collections, correct?
Right, well, the CSR hours is just where, that's just the personnel who are answering questions on, you got a billing question, they're manning the phones. And the IVR payments, that's when somebody calls up our
Yeah.
toll-free number and they want to make a payment.
Right.
You just use your debit card, credit
Right.
card.
Okay, and
So every
that-
time that happens, they charge us 61
That's not
cents.
part of the collection process.
That's not part of the
That's
collection
just
process. Yeah, that's a total
the
different,
one-
right.
And then the collection is $63 an hour.
Right, when they're working on collections, right.
And then in addition to that, they get a commission on what they collect.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And this
Yes.
contract is 10 years?
Yes. And I'll show you the numbers on the next page, shows you how much we're kind
Okay.
of our payback
All
on that on the next page.
Cool, thanks.
All right. So the total costs on slide 5 for the 12-month period of October 23, September 24 were 2.66 million. Now, the big area is, the call center itself, which includes the hours for the agents that work answering the calls. That's 2.2 million, which is about 86% of that 2.5 million. Again, go back to the IVR payments, we paid out about $270,000 during the year. That's the 61 cent per payment. And then we have the pass-through cost for toll-free and language line. Now, collections, that's where they're going out and trying to collect bad debts. So we paid about $86,000 in collections. That doesn't include the other 9% that goes to Orcom, which is a different contract.
How
Now,
much would that have been?
that would have been another 9%, which would have been,
9% of the 85,000?
so it would have been, yeah, no, it would have been, so the commission costs were 53.2, so it'd been another 53,000 added to the 85, so it'd be about 130,000 in total.
Okay.
So we did collect 592,000 through this process, which we were surprised. I didn't think they'd have any luck through this process, but they really did. So if you look at the return on costs, if you exclude the 9% that goes to Vertex, we're collecting 86 cents on the dollar. But if you include the full 18%, we're collecting about 77 cents on the dollar through this process. That includes the full 18% commission and the hourly charge. So I think it's worth the effort.
And otherwise, we would have written these,
I'm sorry?
we would have written these fees.
Yeah, we wouldn't have collected anything. So I think it's a good effort because we're collecting, 77 cents
Yeah.
on every dollar. So
What, I guess,
Every dollar that, like,
I'm sorry.
okay, I'm having trouble. This is not the total collection process.
No, this is just one. This is an
One
additional
aspect.
process this is in addition to our normal collections
So
process.
anything not collected here goes on through the process.
No, this is after the collections process. This is like a one last effort to collect accounts that we had absolutely no luck with collecting through the normal collection process. This is like our last effort to try to collect some of these amounts. So
this is after we send them to
After
the
everything.
collection
right, this is
attorneys?
after the collections process. right.
We send them to the outside counsel, and then if they can't collect it, it goes to the
Yes,
service.
yes.
Back in through,
I'm sorry.
comes back into this process.
Yeah, yes. This is just something that you, let's make one last attempt at it, and it seems to be paying off. So I was kind of surprised, I'd be honest.
Has the process been successful prior years too? And you say you're surprised, why?
Well, usually, I mean, if we weren't able to collect it through the normal collection procedures,
Right.
normally we had no leverage after that. Normally speaking, we're not filing suits. I guess
Right.
the liens are still in place, but I was just surprised that they were able to collect as much as they were. So.
Marion, have we seen a change in their,
Thank you. No, it's pretty much been consistent. As Todd pointed out, this is kind of our last ditch effort in the collection process. And typically what we'll see is when people get income tax return or something, they'll get a phone call to, just kind of spur them to pay it. Because as Todd pointed out as well, there's still liens on the property. So eventually, hopefully we'll collect that when they go to either refinance or sell the property.
And what percentage of what's the percentage of outstanding fees does this account for in the whole?
Oh, you're talking about this amount?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
it's infinite. I mean, we're not collecting, in terms of percentage, a lot from this particular process. On average, our allowance for doubtful accounts each year is about $5 million. That's the amount that we expect that we're not going to collect through our billing process, and that amount accumulates each year.
Right.
But if you look at the amount that they're collecting out of $5 million,
It's a small one.
we're
Right.
not talking about a lot.
Yeah, I think if I remember off the top of my head, I kind of looked at the previous collections report. I believe like the first agency, the first crack at it, they collected like 15 million in a year's time. So you can see this is only 400,000. So they collect a lot more through the collections process.
Gotcha.
So, any other questions, guys?
You, at some point, you write this off, you write this off. At what point, relative to this process, does that happen?
Okay, so when they get these accounts, they're already written
Yeah,
off.
they're already reserved for it.
So they are trying to collect amounts that are written off.
Written off.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so they're basically on our books, but we have a listing of them. I mean, sorry, they're off our books. They're off our books, but we still have a listing of what's owed us. I got that backwards. My apologies. All right. Any questions, guys? So let's go to slide 6. The scope of this engagement consisted of, as far as scope, of a review of the operations of the district's bill and call center. As I mentioned, this is managed and operated by a third-party service provider. That being said, it is responsible for the district to monitor those overall operations. So with that in mind, we divided the audit into 2 parts. The main operational part, which is a third party, and then the procedures at the district level, was the monitoring portion part of the process. So we did look at transactional items and activity for the period of 8/1/22 through 9/30/24. Now, we didn't look at every month, but that's the period we looked at as far as different transactions. So the overall objectives of slide 7 were to ensure at the third party level, that the third party operates in a manner in compliance with the contract provisions. They provide adequate training to their employees. They'll work on our account, especially the CSRs. Want to make sure the training materials and policies are adequate. Make sure they adequately review and monitor call quality. And they, when call quality is not there, they provide feedback and coaching to the CSR staff. Want to make sure they're invoicing and billing us accurately in a contract compliant manner. They're calculating the service level measurement amounts accurately. So basically what happens there, they have to hit certain service level goals, and if they miss those goals, we get a credit on our invoice, basically. Want to make sure they're complying with the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act, and make sure they're monitoring and controlling the access to the systems properly. At the district level, again, we just want to make sure we're monitoring everything properly, monitoring the overall compliance with the contract, the service level measurements and the calculations of those measurements, monitoring the call handling, the call quality, the customer calls being handled properly. We'll make sure we're reviewing and monitoring and the billings to the district, make sure we're reconciling, making sure those are accurate.
Excuse me, Todd, how do you determine if they're handling customer quality? I mean,
Well, they listen to calls.
okay.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. They get together and listen to calls and so forth.
And these are outbound calls. These folks are calling
That's for the
folks.
collections part.
Right.
The inbound ones are the ones, there's the bulk of it. They listen to recorded calls for both, actually. Mainly the inbound ones, what customers call with a complaint or they have a question, and we see how the agent handle the call. There's certain guidelines they're supposed to follow. You know, they're not talking about that. All right, slide 9. So as far as approaching methodology, so we did, as we always do, we had all the walkthrough process. We met with the third-party personnel. We met with them several times, as well as district personnel. We obtained all the contract documentation from the district files, reviewed all the provisions and requirements. We did obtain all the third-party documentation as far as organizational charts, training materials, if there are published policies and guidelines, which includes guidelines around the call quality, as you asked about. There's a whole section about how the calls are supposed to be handled. We did do detail or transactional testing of the following monthly call quality calibration process. Now that is where they get together, they meet, district personnel and third party, they get together and review calls. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. They call that the call quality calibration process. Internal call quality monitoring. The third party is supposed to review calls internally to record the calls, which includes coaching and training when necessary. We actually listened to calls. We rated the calls ourselves, listened to about 25 calls. We also listened to recorded collections calls as well. Just kind of two different buckets. The calls that are coming in, and then when they're trying to make collections. We listened to both sets of calls. We also looked at system access removal for separating employees, the training procedures, then how they're calculating and reporting those KPIs, and how they're billing and invoicing the district, which involves the KPIs as part of that process. Any questions? All right, if you go to slide 11, the overall results, we did have a satisfactory opinion. I mean, I think overall it went pretty well. We did have 4 opportunities for improvement. But I think big picture, as far, they're doing a good job of handling the actual calls. And that's really what we're concerned about. And that's the main objective here. There are a few items that need some strengthening, but there was nothing that we considered to be significant. So there are some things that need to be tightened up for sure. We go on to slide 12, start going on those items. So the first item is about contract structure and compliance, which is broken down into 3 parts. I'll go over each part separately so you can follow the condition and the recommendation. The first part pertains to the outbound calls, which we were just talking about, collection services, and how those hours are tracked and billed. We noticed 2 things regarding those. The contract does not really address how those hours are to be tracked and billed. It's somewhat silent. It's much more specific regarding the normal CSR hours when they're taking calls, the customer agents. And what we noticed when we look at the bill, we saw some disparities between call time hours versus billed. Call time hours billed. I'm sorry. We saw some between call time hours versus hours billed. And I think the most extreme example was April 23. We saw 118 hours billed with only 17 call time hours. We know they're doing other things. They're doing skip tracing and other things, but we were never able to really get comfortable with the non-call time hours and what they were being used for. Now, bear in mind, the overall cost for the entire year was only $33,000.
And we don't pay that unless we receive,
Well, they charge us by the hour. For the hours, they charge us 65
Right.
hours. Yeah.
So
But
they're
we only
charging for
pay that-
activity.
I'm sorry.
They're charging for activity, but they get a commission.
They get a commission and they charge us by the hour. Yes.
But if they don't collect,
They don't
we
get a-
still eat the $65
Yeah.
an hour.
Right. They charge an hourly rate. So this is a very small part of the contract. it's less than 1% of the contract. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're getting billed properly. So we
Right.
just never got comfortable with it. So we're recommending that they either improve the contract language or improve the tracking documentation. Let's document what services they're performing when they're charging us these hours, or they're skip tracing or whatever it is they're doing. We'd like to see better documentation when they're doing these bills for this hourly charge. All right, so let's move on to slide 14. Again, this is part 2. This has to do with the call calibration meetings. Again, this is where they get together, district management, and gets together with the third party, and they review calls. They review, evaluate, and grade the calls. Generally, they take 5 calls. They're selected randomly. Calls are graded based on published scoring guide, which is on next page. I'll show you that to you. So the graded calls from these meetings are used as part of the service level measurement calculations, performance metric, where the requirement is an average score of 85%. So the problem that we saw with this process is that the calls through the calibration meeting process only account for a small portion of that grade. It's about 12%. So 5 of the 42 calls that they normally look at every month come from that calibration meeting. So when you weight them, it's only 12%. The other 88% come from the calls that they grade internally. So to us, it was like they were grading their own paper, so to speak. So we just thought there had to be a better way to make this a little more fair. Now, the contract language does state that the grade is to be determined by a combination of supplier and client scores. So technically, they are in compliance with the contract language. So we are recommending, if you see 15, you can see that's actually the scoring guide. If you want to take a quick look at that, but that's what it looks like. And if you go to slide 16, so we're recommending that district personnel review and rate an additional 10 calls separately from the calibration meetings. This will do 2 things. It'll improve the district's procedures for monitoring call service quality, and it should help to provide a more balanced and fairly weighted result when calculating that KPI number. So I listen to calls. That shouldn't take about an hour or 2 every month. So I think it's something that's worth the effort. Any questions? Slide 17. This is the third part of this of item 1, as to do with calculation measure of call quality. So as I mentioned in the previous item, it's kind of related to what I just talked about. Third party does listen to and grade calls. They listen to 2 calls per CSLR every month. So what we identified in our testing is they will occasionally score extra calls if a CSR didn't do well. They basically kind of coach them up and then do 2 additional calls later in the month and add that back into the score, which didn't seem like that was a fair way of doing that. To us, the point that the KPI is determined if the COs are properly trained and informed properly at that moment. There are no redos or second chances, so to speak. So we're recommending that management discuss this with the TPSP and eliminate this practice of adding additional calls into the scoring process. Any questions? And we got slide 18. This has to do with the payment system access and employee separation and termination. So in our testing, we noticed a few things in regard to this area. It did not appear that the logon credentials were being disabled in a timely manner. Notifications were not timely. The operations personnel was not letting IT know, and it might be a week later that they would let them know that someone had separated and needed to disable his logon credentials. Now, we were not able to verify if and when the credentials were disabled. There was no documentation. But we do know that passwords do expire after 90 days. So everything we looked in there, we didn't find anybody that shouldn't have been in there. But So we're recommending that procedures be implemented that ensure that the logon credentials be disabled on the day of separation and do a better job of documenting the date and completion of that removal. So we can actually see the documentation that ensure that it actually happened. Any questions? Slide 14, I'm sorry, slide 19, my bad. Slide 19 is handling of calls received and proper closing. As I mentioned, as part of our testing, we did listen to, I think, 24 calls. We evaluated and graded those calls. Now, of the 24, in our opinion, a proper closing was not performed for 14 of the calls. Which proper closing is basically a summary of the call, actions taken, ask the customer if he needs anything else, that kind of thing. They did a pretty good job of getting through the call and answering the questions. They just didn't always close it properly and kind of, finish it off properly. So we recommend the management meet with the third party and discuss improving the consistency of the closing process. I think this is something that's pretty easily resolved. All right, slide 20 is the last item. It has to do with training and training materials. We identified a couple of items. Excuse me. First item pertains to the escalation of calls to upper management. What we saw here was there was no published or official guidance for the proper procedure for escalating calls to upper personnel. When should this happen? How should this happen? What are the steps specifically? Now, in our discussions, I think there was times when things should have been escalated and they weren't. And sometimes if things got escalated and when they shouldn't have got, I think it happened both directions. So I think they need some guidance in this area and kind of lock it down a little more. There is training for de-escalation in that, listening, calming down the customer, which is good training to have as well. You need both and they're connected. The second item, as I mentioned earlier, they do grade 2 calls per month. The goal is a score of 85% for each call. Now, when the CSR receives a sub 85 score, they're supposed to go over that report with the grader and go over the items that they had weaknesses in, so they can be coached up and learn from their mistakes, so to speak. We looked at 50 reviews. 9 of the 50 were below 85. Now, 7 of those 9 did not receive their required subsequent coaching. So go slide 21, it's just an example of what that rating form looks like. You can see at the bottom, the evaluation was not reviewed by the agent. That's what we're seeing over several of those. And then slide 22, last slide. So our recommendation is basically, so we're recommending that, getting back to the policies, policy procedures be developed and published for the proper escalation procedures and kind of tighten this area up a little bit. And then also recommend implementing procedures that ensure that those customer service reps receive the proper coaching after they get a sub 85 score on one of the reviews. So that's really important to keep the call quality up. Do you have any questions? That's all I have. I appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you, Todd. Next meeting tentative date is December the 3rd, 2024. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Trustees will get things swapped out and get on with the program management.
Everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the 260th meeting of the Program Management Committee. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, record will reflect that trustees Wabi, Evans, Watson, Wilson, and Nikozisson all present with trustee Nikozisson online.
Yeah. Can I get a motion to approve the committee minutes of first?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. No objection. Minutes are approved. Let's move on to the engineering department agenda item.
Good morning, trustees. These are the items you'll be voting on next Thursday at the board meeting. First two items are green infrastructure grants. The first one being a grant, green infrastructure CSO volume reduction for 6543 Crest Avenue. The ordinance will authorize the district to enter agreement with Shed St. Louis to provide financial assistance through the grant program. Purpose of project is reduce combined sewer overflows into the river to Pear. This project will reduce runoff with the installation of amended soils on the redevelopment project. Total cost of the project is estimated at $10,120, and Shed St. Louis is requesting reimbursement for that full amount. I have a diagram of where this is located. It's in the University City, Upper River to Pear watershed, redevelopment of some properties there, and they're going to capture the runoff with amended soils. The second grant is for green infrastructure grant for Gas Mart. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter an agreement with Southside Property LLC, provide a financial assistance through the grant program. The purpose of the program is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River per the consent decree and long-term control plan. This project will reduce runoff with the installation of permeable pavers. The total cost of the project is estimated at $109,800, and Southside Properties is requesting that full amount. This property is located in North St. Louis City near Natural Bridge and North Newstead. As you can see, a significant amount of the property is going to be capture runoff through the installation of permeable pavements. Any question on those two? All right, next four items are new design contracts for fiscal year 25. These projects that are going to be designed by four different consultants will be constructing in the fiscal year 26 and 27 timeframes. Two of them are for pump station related work, and two of them are for sanitary relief wastewater linear projects. First one is a pump station replacement design contract A. This action will appropriate funds and authorize staff to enter a design contract with Tuveno Way and Merchant for the design of pump station contract A. Project consists of design and preparation of construction documents for multiple pump station project. Design contract consists of 3 potential pump station replacement project. The purpose of the project is to replace assets that have exceeded their design life. The construction cost for these 3 pump stations is approximately $2.3 million. The 3 pump stations involved are the Marco Pump Station, the Old Riverwoods Pump Station, and the Shawn Parkway Pump Station. There were 2 other proposals considered for the project, and our appropriation of $600,000 for the design services is equal to that to what we presented in the CIP budget. Tuveno has committed to 40.71% MWBE participation on the project. The MWBE goal for this project is 31%. Are there any questions? All right, the next item is for pump station repair and improvements, contract A. This appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a design contract. Authorize the design contract with Brown and Caldwell for included in this project. The project consists of design and preparation of construction documents for multiple pump station repair and improvement projects. This design contract consists of 4 pumping stations for various equipment upgrades, electrical upgrades, structural analysis, concrete repair, and fiber network upgrades. The construction cost anticipated for these repairs is approximately $7.2 million. And again, our construction will be in fiscal years 26, 27, and 28. The 4 pumping stations are the Gasconade Pump Station, the Harlem Lift Station, Lime 1 Pump Station, and then various pump stations for fall protection upgrades at those pump stations. There are 2 other proposals considered. Our appropriation of $1,300,000 is equal to that what was proposed in the budget supplement. Brown and Caldwell has a commitment of 18.34% minority and 14.98% women participation from subconsultants on the project. That meets our current goals. Our goals for consulting jobs are minority 18% and women 13% for design fees over $500,000. All right, this was for wastewater linear sewer design, contract A. Appropriates funds and authorized staff to enter design contract with Stantec Consulting Services for the wastewater linear design contract A. The project consists in design and preparation of construction documents for multiple linear sewer projects. Design contract consists of 7 potential linear sewer projects. The purpose of this project is to solve wastewater problems and maintain compliance with the consent decree, eliminate SSOs and sewer backups. Construction cost estimate for these 7 projects, approximately $16.2 million. The projects involved are Delcrest Sanitary Relief, White Plains Sanitary Relief, Ladue Hill Drive Sanitary Sewers, Glenway Drive Sanitary Relief, Upper Topping Sanitary Relief, and Doherty Ferry Road Sanitary Relief, and Fenton Creek Sanitary Relief, again for approximately $13 million. There were 2 other proposals considered on the project. Our appropriation of $1.2 million is about $100,000 over what was originally proposed in the budget supplement. Stantec is committed to 25% minority participation subconsultant and 14.3% women participation, which exceeds our 18 and 13% goals for these type projects. Second linear project is contract B. Again, appropriates funds and authorized staff to enter design contract with ABNA Engineering for the design of these projects. Project consists of 10 potential linear sewer projects. Purpose of this project is to solve wastewater problems, to maintain compliance with the consent decree, eliminate water backups, and sanitary sewer overflows. The construction cost for these projects is $13,319,000 approximately. Projects associated with this design project are the Barrett Station Road Sanitary Relief, Paxton Sanitary Relief, Sappington Sanitary Relief, Sun Valley Sanitary Relief, Sunset Sanitary Relief, Warson Terrace Sanitary Relief, West Florissant Sewer Repair, and Woodlawn Sanitary Relief. There were 2 other proposals considered for this project. The appropriation of $900,000 for services is equal to what was presented in the budget supplement. ABNA Engineering is committed to approximately 30% MBE subconsultant participation and 23.58 women subconsultant participation. In addition, ABNA is also a certified minority and woman-owned firm, so essentially giving us 100% participation on this. Any questions on those? All right. The following 2 items are supplemental appropriation to ongoing construction management projects. These are services the district contracts out to assist with construction management over our major projects, primarily at our wastewater treatment plants and pump stations, and for tunnel projects. First one is construction management for tanks, treatments, pump station facilities. This action appropriates additional funds and authorizes staff to amend an existing construction management contract with KAI 360 Construction Services for the annual extension. Preliminary construction estimate for the facilities that they're overseeing is $500 million. The project consists of the biddability, constructability review during the design of these projects and construction management services during construction. The value of the construction management contract, the entire contract is between $40 and $60 million. This contract amendment of $4 million brings our current value of the contract to $47 million. The appropriation of $4 million is equal to what we had in the budget supplement. Some of the construction management services projects are the Coldwater Creek wastewater treatment plant repair project, the Bissell Point fine screen project, the Bissell Point trickling filter media replacement phase 2 project, and the Lee May pump station and force main project. In addition, they'll provide review of designs ongoing prior to construction for the Cox Creek B pump station relocation and the Missouri River engine generator replacement and digester improvements. MWB requirements. When the project was initially awarded, there was a commitment of 48% participation that was agreed to. Right now, there's 70% for this particular amendment of participation. Right now, bring our total of 68% overall for the contract. There was a 30% goal at the time of the contract signing.
Rich, can I ask a quick question about this? So this is, the original contract was issued in 2013?
Correct.
And we're just extending again. So every year we've extended it?
Correct. When we started the consent decree, we hired a number of major consulting firms to handle both design and construction. Excuse me. And to continue that is this is one of the 2 construction management contracts. One was for overseeing the construction work at our plants and pump station. The other was for major tunnels, which is the other one. So each year we appropriate dollars and amend those contracts to continue that.
Shouldn't we just rebid the contract? I mean,
Well, understand you're talking about they're inspecting projects that are ongoing over years. I mean, a lot of these projects last 2 to 3 years.
right.
You would lose all your experience. In other words, you would have to totally start from scratch. And when we made that decision, that was the decision we made, is to continue on based on good service. Now, if we were having problems
Right.
with these 2, we could cut them off. And in fact, we have a number of these larger watersheds where, we did go a different direction on. These 2 particular ones, they're doing a great job for us.
Hey, Rich, we started back then with a number of these types of contracts, but over time we've diminished those, right?
Correct. We're basically from a design standpoint, we started out with a total of 7, we called them watershed contracts at the time. 2 for construction management, 5 for design. Basically, we're down to 1 for design and these 2 for construction management. And more than likely, the 2 construction management and the 1 for design, which is the 2 major tunnels that we have coming up,
Right.
will be here for the duration of the consent decree.
So these, you anticipate these contracts to extend for another decade or 2?
Yes, till the end of the consent decree.
And how do you figure out what the extent, when we agree to the extension, how do we figure out what the fee is? Because I mean, I noticed it moved from 7 million and 20.
Yeah, these are basically cost plus fees. In other words, they charge us for the number of hours and the number of people. So we monitor how many folks they have out there
Right.
doing the work based on an hourly rate with a range based on the specific person working the jobs. And that's really what we monitor is the rates that they're charging.
Okay.
Any other questions? Very good questions, thank you. The next one is construction management for the Lower Merrimack and Deer Creek Tunnel Project. This action appropriates additional funds and authorizes staff to amend construction management contract with Black and Veatch. Again, extension based on acceptable performance. This is for construction management for the Merrimack Tunnel System, River to Pear Tributary CSO projects, the Deer Creek and University City projects. Preliminary construction estimate for tunnel projects is $630 million. The project consists of the biddability and constructability of design during tunnel projects for the future projects for the combined sewer overflow. The value construction management project for the entire program is estimated to be between 40 and 60 million. This contract amendment of 4.5 million brings the current contract value to 38,490,000. The construction management that'll be performed in this fiscal year is for the Lower Merrimack, Baumgartner to Fenton Tunnel, the Mary Avenue CSO, the Black Creek, Haddington Court, Hampton Creek Sanitary Relief. And then services during the design for the River to Pear, Lower and Upper River to Pear CSO storage tunnels and the Hampton Creek Sanitary Relief, phase 1. Again, MWB requirements, there was original goal in this contract of 30% participation. They are providing 37.5 on this amendment. Their current overall participation on the contract is 37.5%. Any questions? All right, the next item is the Upper Matisse Creek Sanitary Relief. This is a planned supplemental appropriation, additional funds, and authorized to amend a design contract with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley for post-design services on the Upper Maline Sanitary Trunk Sewer. Purpose of this project is to construct approximately 15,000 feet of 8 to 36-inch diameter pipe. The purpose of the project is alleviate wet weather surcharging and building backups. The construction cost estimate for this project is $11,100,000. Total appropriation for design services is $25,000 less than what was proposed in the original CRP. And then we did bid this project, so we'll start construction on that in the next few months. There was a commitment of 40.8% minority and women participation. This project was originally designed, there were no goals for the project. This particular amendment, they will have participation approximately 58%, bringing an overall participation from minority and women sub-consultants to almost 43%. All right, the next two items are projects that were bid this past month. The first item is the Prospect Hill Leachate Pretreatment System. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of a small duplex pump station and pre-engineered metal building containing treatment equipment, including water softeners, filters, and granular activated carbon units. The purpose of this project is to provide pre-treatment system to the leachate collection system in anticipation of regulations regarding per and polyfluoroalkyl substances are known as PFAS. The construction costs associated with this project will be fully reimbursed through an emerging contaminant grant being offered through the state of Missouri. The district received 2 bids on this project. Our low bid was from Keeley Construction. The bid was above our design estimate, and our appropriation of $3.9 million is above the original budget. We have already checked with Missouri DNR, and they've reviewed the bids we've received and agreed to fund the full amount of this project in a grant form. MWB participation on construction contracts, we have a goal of 10% minority and 10% women's subcontractor participation. Keeley is committed to 20.02% participation. Next project is the Upper Matisse Trunk Sewer Relief Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 14,800 feet of sewers 8 to 36-inch diameter, including 570 lineal feet of 21 to 30-inch pipe and tunnel. The purpose of the project, again, is to alleviate wet weather surcharging and basement backups. The district received 4 bids on this. Our low bid was from Fred M. Luth and Sons. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $8 million in this fiscal year and 2.4 in fiscal year 26 for a total appropriation of 10.4 million is below our original 2-year budget for the project, which was approximately $13.8 million. Fred M. Luth's commitment of 20.24%, minority and women participation, which meets our 10% minority and 10% women goals. Next item is a general services agreement for facility and sewer contract B. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend the contract. The original contract allowed for the execution of one option year for the contract for GHD for planning assistance for various projects in our capital and operations budget. Project consists of the condition assessment, the remaining useful life of small sanitary combined storm sewer and treatment plant projects, and as needed throughout the district to support our internal planning efforts. This contract with an appropriation of $475,000 this fiscal year will provide a total funding of $950,000. GHD has a commitment of 31% MWB participation on the project, which they're currently meeting. Next one is also a renewal of a general services agreement for water quality support services. This appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend a design contract. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter amendment number 1 with HDR. This is the first of 2 option year renewals for the project. Purpose of the project will provide $150,000 annual of water quality and other environmental regulatory support to help ensure the district's compliance with environmental laws and regulations. They'll provide a wide variety of support, everything from MDNR quality standards, TMDL, integrated planning, 303, impaired watershed, listing methodology, air pollution control, and solid and hazardous waste management. The scope of the work will be developed for each regulatory issue on an as-needed basis. The consultant will submit a list of tasks to be performed and approved by the district. Our appropriation, again, of $150,000 is equal to what we had presented in the CIP. And since these are a specific service for water quality, there was no MWB goal for this project. Then the final item is a request for condemnation authorization for the Lindbergh Sanitary Relief Project. This ordinance authorized staff to proceed with further condemnation efforts, including the filing of all necessary court pleadings and documents, leading the acquisition of permanent easement or temporary construction easements on 3 parcels of ground. The easements and temporary construction easements are needed for this project, which consists of 2,700 linear feet of 8 to 18 inch in 18 inches of sanitary sewers. Purpose of project is to alleviate basement backups and relieve surcharge sanitary sewers. Again, there were 3 parcels that we had on this project that we're unable to acquire. There were a total of 5. We've gotten 2 of the easements in order to keep the project on schedule. Request an authorization. We've got an exhibit provided for you, which shows the location of the 3 parcels. Parcel 2, the easement, this is one We've just been unable to reach the contractor. It's owned by a realty company. Not uncommon. We can't reach out, then we end up sending letters until we can get this authorization, and usually that gets the attention of the property owner. Parcel 4, we are speaking with this property owner for this easement. We've made an offer. They have not provided a counteroffer. We do believe that we will obtain that easement without condemnation. And then finally, parcel 5, which is the largest of the easement. What we have here is it's in the process of an ownership transfer. They have allowed us to speak with the potential owner, and they seem to be working with us. We also believe we should be able to come to agreement prior to that property transfer. Again, seeking this to allow us to proceed this direction to keep the project to meet the current schedule. Are there any questions? If not, that's all I had.
Thank you. Is there any other business? If not, I'll entertain a motion. The next scheduled meeting is scheduled for December the 3rd. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
No objection.
All right, we'll call to order the 308th meeting of the Finance Committee. Get a roll call, please.
Yes, the record will reflect the trustees Wabi, Evans, Watson, Wilson, and Nicholasison are all present with trustee Nicholasison online.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the October 1st meeting?
So move.
Check.
All right, the first item is the NEPC onboarding review.
All right, we have Deanna Jones and Doug Mosley, and from NEPC, they're a new OCIO, outsourced chief investment officer provider for the pension plan. They're in to provide some introduction, to talk a little about onboarding, and then some of the immediate changes that they are recommending to the plan that we'll be voting on resolutions with next week. Investment policy statement and asset allocation.
Great.
So
Thank-
take it away.
thanks, Sam.
Deanna is our lead consultant on on the engagement.
So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today we have 3 agenda items. The first one is just an FYI. It's our first time meeting you, so we wanted to give you a chance to get to know us. The last 2 items are voting items or things we need direction from the committee for. It's your asset allocation discussion and your investment policy revisions. Yes, it is very audacious to come in to the first meeting and ask you to vote, but we hope that this is an interactive conversation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to stop us and let us know how we can help you. So first, if we could go to page 4 of our deck, I'm going to turn it over to Doug to talk a little bit about the NEPC team.
Great. This exhibit is an overview of kind of the resources that we bring to bear at work on your account. Deanna and I are both part of the public pension fund team, so our specialty is working with other public pension funds. And then Varun Raman is a member of our OCIO team, so he's part of the group that sets the strategy and then does the implementation in terms of, moving any capital around, rebalancing the portfolio, and making any recommended changes to NEPC's investment committee, which would be communicated to you as well. Below that, you can see the firm resources. We have a research team, the investment team there, our managing partner, and the executive team that run the firm. And then we have the supporting groups in marketing, technology, and legal and compliance. I would note that we are working with you on the pension, but also the defined contribution plans. And so we actually have additional resources that are specialized in just working with DC plans. And but Deanna and I would be the constant on your relationship along with Varun. So the first significant voting item is just, it comes out of the new relationship with MSD. The first item that we always try to tackle is asset allocation, understanding where your portfolio is when we're retained, any changes we would recommend from a policy standpoint, but we're also having discussions about the implementation of that policy and what that would look like. We want to balance the actuarial return objectives of the plan, take into account the cash flow profile of the plan. We want to balance risk and return, but also look at management fees and keeping those low, and also look at your liquidity, making sure you always can get access to capital. And your portfolio is very liquid, so that was less of a factor. We have a core belief about asset allocation. I think, our investment team, we have a dedicated team that just focuses on asset allocation tools and our capital market assumptions. And you'll hear more about that in a second. But we believe that this policy decision is really the driver of your returns, right? So even more important than whether you go passive or active in a category, it's what's the size of those allocations to each category. And we're going to talk in detail about what we're proposing. I mentioned our asset class assumptions. We update those every quarter, and our asset allocation team, the idea with those assumptions is to look at market pricing and conditions and valuation and have a forward-looking expectation for those returns of each asset class. And that sometimes can be counterintuitive. So if you think about the last several years since COVID, the equity market has done very well. So when a market is kind of racing ahead and exceeding our expectations over a multi-year period, our forward-looking assumption for return generally is coming down. So right now, the equity market's kind of at a high point. Our forward-looking assumption for the future, because of the valuation being so high, is that we think that returns are a little bit more diminished. But obviously, that's the biggest equity. The U.S. equity market's the biggest global market in the world. It's bigger than the fixed income market, and certainly the U.S. dominates the global equity market. So we'll talk a little bit about the allocation in a second. We project a 10-year return for your fund, and we also use a 30-year return that more coincides with your actuarial time horizon. So, the 10-year returns are designed to be a little bit more dynamic and really reflect those kind of shorter-term conditions over the last 2 to 3 years and our expectation over the next 2 to 3 years. But the 30-year assumptions are more normalized and driven by again, by inflation and interest rates and other conditions. So when we look at asset allocation on page 7, the inputs into the process really are basic building blocks. And I mentioned inflation, real growth or economic growth is a big part of that. The valuation, where a market is trading now relative to its history or relative to in the equity market to things like earnings and earnings growth. And then yield is obviously starts at the basics with the cash yield in the market, and then what bond yields are at the 10-year level, what yields you can achieve by going into corporate bonds or high yield. So cutting to the chase on page 8 is kind of the proposed asset allocation. I'm going to turn it over to Deanna, but I just kind of give you a quick highlight of what we've done here. In the left-hand box, we've got your current policy, and I would note that this is the policy that was last approved, I believe, by this group. There are some allocations that are under or overweight your policy currently. We've got our recommended allocation highlighted in red. And then alongside each of the rows on the right, you can see the 10 and 30-year assumptions for each category, both for return, but also the risk number, which is the standard deviation. Now, this framework is designed to be beta only, meaning we're just looking at a market return that we could get passively implemented. We're not assuming that any manager is adding value in any category, even though we will use a mix of passive and active management when we implement. So I'll turn it over to Deanna, and she'll walk you through the recommended allocation.
Before we jump in, are there any questions on how we develop our assumptions? Okay, great. Hearing none. We have kind of 3 broad asset class categories for MSD. So the first one is equity. If we could go back to the previous page, I could stay on that one for a minute. The first one is equity. When we're thinking about your equity portfolio, what we're really expecting out of it is to be a lot of growth. So we're expecting a lot of alpha or high returns from that category. Within fixed income, we're expecting that to be more protectionary. So when you need sources of liquidity in stressed markets, fixed income would be where we would go to. The multi-asset category, which you have now as real estate, and we're recommending adding 2 additional categories or 2 additional allocations. That's more of your diversifier. So that's a hedge diversifier against rates. It's a diversifier relative to your equity portfolio. As you look at the recommended allocations, we're really wanting to move 5% of the portfolio. So we want to decrease some of that fixed income exposure and add to equity, so your growth piece, and add to 3% to the multi-asset. So if we go,
what is public real estate or real assets?
So public real assets is a publicly traded
Like a
fund that will give you exposure to things like commodities
Gotcha.
and publicly traded real estate. And we'll go over why we think those make sense too.
Thank you.
So if we tackle equity first, if we could go to the next page. So what we're recommending that you do in equity is a couple of things. So we want you to decrease your large cap exposure, decrease your small cap exposure, do an underweight to non-developed U.S. or developed non-U.S. and add to emerging markets. So if we take those piece by piece, our recommendation for you to decrease your allocations in U.S. is because we want to add a dedicated allocation to global equity. And if you look at the box over to the left, we break out what that allocation would look like if you pare back the onion, if you will, within global equity to see what the exposures would be from a geographic standpoint. So you're really adding to U.S. equity or U.S. large cap, not subtracting if you pare back what the exposures within global equity would be. And the reason why we want to add global is because that's your large cap portfolio will be largely passive. So we're adding global as a nimble piece of the market. Those global managers will be more tactical in nature. They'll be unconstrained geographically, so they can go wherever opportunity lies from a geographic standpoint, but they will be heavily overweighted to U.S. So you're still getting a significant amount of US just under a global umbrella.
Are the managers under global equity, are they primarily actively managed as
Yeah,
opposed to
that's going to
index?
be an active managed
Okay.
piece. So we will be, your large cap portfolio will be passively managed. We think from a return fee perspective, that's the best implementation for large cap. We will have what we call a raw fee piece, which is a little bit of a value tilt within large cap, but that would also be passively managed. So we're saving you fees and deploying fees only where we think you will get real return for, which is in the global piece of the market. So if there are no questions on equity, we can talk a little bit about fixed income. So if we can go to the next page. So within fixed income, you all right now have an allocation to that third line down, which is the US Ag. That's your core fixed income portfolio, and you have some return-seeking fixed income in your portfolio. What we want to do, when you look kind of at what's in that core fixed income portfolio, you're getting a lot of exposures to treasuries. We want to make that exposure passive. We think that's the best implementation from a fee perspective and also a compensation perspective. So what we want to do is kind of move that core fixed income piece to be 6% and have your safe haven or protectionary piece of your portfolio within fixed income to be an equal split between treasuries and tips. That's the best kind of fee return implementation. And if you think about your fixed income portfolio, that safe haven, that's really your core. That's your liquidity pool. If anything goes wrong, that's where we would source assets from. And then you would have a bespoke piece that we're calling return-seeking fixed income. And we're switching it from an absolute return fixed income portfolio that you have now to a global multi-sector portfolio. We're doing that for two reasons. The returns are better in global multi-sector, but also we want to give you some better diversification within your credit portfolio from a geographic standpoint. The quality of global multi-sector will be higher and the fees will be lower. So we're getting you a better risk, a better return profile, a better risk profile, and also saving you on some fees with global multi-sector.
I would add that this portfolio also builds in the tips, which gives you some more inflation protection, which is a general theme with kind of some of the changes we're making, including the next one we're going to cover.
So if we could go to page 13. Sorry, I'm having you skip a bit. One more page down, this one. Sorry, one more page up. Right there, thank you. So this is the newer piece of your portfolio that we're recommending. So right now you have a target to real asset. That real asset is, real estate. That real estate piece is in an open-ended fund. That's the Trumbull Fund. You've already voted to liquidate that. So you've already gotten some money back. It's core fixed income, which has been challenged. So you haven't gotten all your money back. You have right around 5% in that portfolio. What we're recommending, and the reason we're recommending doing public real assets in GAA is, one, we wanted to improve your liquidity profile. So we wanted your profile to be almost 100% liquid. Your closed fund, really the biggest objective is for you to manage downside risk, and there is some more risk with a liquidity lockup. In addition, from a risk return profile, we think the blend of real assets in GAA offers a more attractive return risk in addition to the liquidity for MSD than the real estate fund that you're in. So our recommendation is that you add public real assets. That's going to be a passive exposure in the portfolio. So the fees are kind of less than what you would pay in real estate. And that's going to give you exposure to commodities, natural resource equities, public infrastructure, REITs, and gold. So it's a very diversified hedging pool of assets that you'll be investing in. GAA, or global asset allocation, is also a diversifying asset class. So this is really an opportunity for you to get dynamic exposure to things that you don't get in your portfolio now. So you'll have some equity exposure, but that equity exposure will be more emerging markets or more kind of global themed equities. You'll get some fixed income exposure. You'll get some commodities exposure. It's really a dynamic exposure in the portfolio to offer some diversification, and also to Doug's point, these assets add some hedging, some inflation hedging within the portfolio.
And that part would be actively managed.
Yes. So I'll pause because I know we said an awful lot before we go into kind of other analytics. Are there any questions? Okay, great. So if we can go to the next page. We wanted to show you how we slice risk, or how we consider risk in the portfolio. So we measure risk, as most investment consultants do, as a measure of standard deviation. So what's the plus and minus? The returns that we talked about in the beginning are what we expect your experience to be on average, but there will be down markets, there'll be up markets. And so risk helps us kind of assess what those markets are. Your risk is going up conservatively, considering your return is going up. But what we wanted to show in these two charts is how that risk is being diversified relative to your current portfolio. So if you look at the first box, that shows you how your risk is being spread over the different asset classes, including the two new asset classes we're introducing. And then you're also seeing, to our earlier points about you're paying a lot in your fixed income portfolio, but not necessarily always getting compensated because of the interest rate environment, being compensated for the risk that you're taking in your portfolio. So you're seeing your defensive bucket, that risk kind of get decreased because we're adding things like tips and treasuries in their passive. Then if we can go to the next page, this just shows your liquidity profile. So we've improved your liquidity profile from right around 12% annually. That was that Trumbull piece, the real estate piece that was locked up. This portfolio is now 100% liquid. So that's an improvement in the liquidity profile. So those were really the formal comments on asset allocation. I'll pause and see what questions I can answer for you guys.
I just want to point out one thing there. Well, they listed recommended targets. There will be ranges like we've had in the past. Those ranges are spelled out in another document that's in your packet, which would be the investment policy, which is something else that we'll vote on next. But just there are ranges still to allow for some movement and tilts and give them some flexibility.
So should we go with
to
the IPS? Okay.
Please, sorry.
So no worries. The last item we have is the investment policy statement. So you got kind of two documents for this. You got the actual red line of the investment policy statement, and these are the summary points. So our general philosophy around investment policy statements is that we want them to be guardrails, right? So we want to be strict enough that it safeguards all your assets, but we don't want them to be so handcuffing that it is difficult to comply with them. So, which is why we have ranges, right? Because the market moves. So you could be overweight very quickly, and we don't want to have to be in a situation where we're fire selling any assets to get back to target. So the key parts of an IPS is, first, they define the roles and responsibilities. What is the expectation of NEPC as your investment consultant, your staff, your managers, your custodians, all the key players of your assets. The next two important things are defining the goals. Why are we investing these goals? So things like your actuarial rate of return will be memorialized in this document. Your investment manager guidelines will be memorialized in the documents. Your risk return, your benchmark, all those things that kind of narrate the management of your assets will be memorialized in the document. It's important to note that IPS is a living document. So anytime we have an asset allocation change, anytime a manager comes out, anytime there is language in the document that needs to be approved, we will come before the board and ask for that approval. So within your current document, what we did is redline things that we would recommend as a change. It's really only two major things that we are recommending. The first one is, as your document is written now, it narrates a relationship between an advisory consultant and MSD. You've moved to a discretionary model, so we need to update that language to be reflective of that. And that you see those updates on page 3 of the IPS and page 4. There's some smaller language on page 7 that needs to be updated in addition to those. And then the next major thing is if you adopt the asset allocation policy, that will need to be updated in the IPS, in addition to as we change your investment portfolios and new managers come into the portfolio, those investment guidelines will be a part of the document too. Those changes will be reflected in Appendix 1, 2, and 3. So I'll pause, see if I can answer any questions, and if not, I'll turn it back over.
Okay, no questions. So there is the red line of the investment policy is there, so you can see the detail of the changes, but I think she summarized what the changes are generally to allow them to work as an OCIO. The new asset allocation is in there with ranges, so that is actually what we'll be voting on next week at the board meeting. So if there are no questions or concerns, I'm going to let
Are we in compliance with all the state laws and federal laws with this policy?
Yes. Yeah. The policy, I mean, we used our current policy as kind of a base and then changed some of the things, but there's nothing that's changing that would be in conflict with any state laws. And that's something that we do monitor regularly. As a matter of fact, there'll be a new session starting here pretty soon, and can't wait to see what the legislature comes up with.
Your life, liberty, and property are unsafe.
And we, if there are legislative changes, we'll come back in and say, this needs to be updated and this is the reason why.
Yeah, that is one of the things in the RFP we asked for and looked for, people with experience in Missouri, who knows what kind of goes on in the state and sees some of the things that might impact our plans, because that is something that we'll be talking about regularly. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you all for trusting us to help you, partner with you to manage your retirement assets.
And then you are welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the committee meetings, or you're free to go out in the rain.
Go vote.
Thank you.
And then, we already have Marion over there. Okay, so the next couple of items are Marion's before it comes back to me.
Okay, so
Sorry, Stephanie, there's
there's
things to go through.
I'll let Stephanie get to the report there. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so the first item that I have is the adjustment review report. As required by our wastewater ordinance, I'm going to give you an overview of the transactions that are contained in the report. So in total, we had approximately 41 adjustments totaling a little less than $567,000. The bulk of those adjustments you can find in the top, at the top of the report. We had 36 adjustments totaling $504,800 roughly. Most of that related to adjustments that we get from water utilities. They're either adjustments to meter readings that we have to go back and credit customers' accounts for, or in some cases increase customers' accounts. But here we had a net decrease in revenue, or they are reviews done by our Department of Environmental Compliance, where we go out and assess how much water is actually entering into the sewer system. And so we make adjustments to customer accounts based on that information. Those are reflected in that first section of the report. Second section shows actual write-offs of accounts. We had 4 write-offs totaling $56,000. These are due to county tax sales or property that was transferred to the Land Reutilization Authority, or LRA as we refer to it. And then finally, in the third section, we had actual settlements that the ARC committee made with customers. And so you see one settlement that was for approximately $6,200 that related to late fees that we agreed to waive in exchange for a large payment from a customer. And then last but not least, bottom of the page, you have other adjustments, and these again are billings that we issued to the Bridgeton landfill for treatment of their wastewater flows, and also two bills to Missouri American Water for their share of the costs associated with the Lower Merrimack treatment plant. So are there any questions that I can answer regarding this report? Okay, if not, I will move on to the next item that's on the agenda. Before I do that, though, I do just want to take a quick second to congratulate our accounting team again on the audit, and I especially wanted to call out a couple of personnel. Jessica Berry is our accounting manager there. We have 2 accountant 3s, which are our senior accountants. Actually, we just hired a new one that started this week, but so Lori Highball and Jennifer Rice, they all do just a fantastic job. They're some of the first folks that arrive and some of the ones that leave last. So I just wanted to express my appreciation to them while I had a chance. So, okay, so next, I have collection litigation attorney contract resolution. So we employ 3 collection attorneys, the Gustav Law Firm, the John Hymos Law Firm, and Kramer and Frank Law Firm. So our initial contract was for 1 year for option renewal periods. And so these resolutions would allow us to exercise the 4th and final option year of those contracts. We, on average, pay our law firms approximately $1.5 million a year. Just to give you an idea of kind of what we collect, what they collect. So for our fiscal year that just ended, our law firms collected about $18 million for us of delinquent account balances. In total, if you include the law firms and the collection agencies, they collect about 40 million, or they collected about $40 million in FY24. So that gives you kind of the order of magnitude in terms of the amounts or the return that we get from the contract. So are there any questions that I can answer regarding a contract? Okay, thank you. And then last but not least, as part of our year-end budget process, we make adjustments to fund balance budgets to make sure that we don't show a negative expenditure within those funds. And so you'll see a chart which will show the amounts that we have to transfer from funds to funds. So the first chart, Stephanie, if you'll go down one page. So that chart that's depicted there, there's actually 4 sections to it. So the first 2 sections actually show transfers of budget allocations from those funds in the very first section to funds at the in the second section that total approximately $1.3 million. Now, we're not asking for additional budget allocations. All we're doing is moving funds where we have budget surpluses to other funds where we had budget shortages. And we're required to report anytime we transfer budget amounts or fund balance in between funds. I have to report that back to the audit committee. This is typically done once our audit is completed. We book adjusted amounts as part of the audit and throughout the year, actually. And when we get final numbers, we calculate what those transfers need to be and I bring that information back to the committee for their approval. The last section actually shows fund balance transfers. So in this particular case, we had about $16,600 item that we're moving from our district stormwater fund. We're actually moving fund balance to the Watkins Creek OMCI. Are there any questions regarding those transactions that I can answer?
Is this within a normal range?
Yeah, last year, just to kind of give you an idea, we had about, typically the amounts will range anywhere from about 2 million to 5 million, depending on what's going on. Last year, we had budget transfers that totaled 3.4 million, but the bulk of that related to our wastewater backup funds and our overcharge main funds. And by bulk of that 3.4 million, about 3 million of it related just to those two items. So we had some large expenditures related to wastewater backup claims that we had last year. So we made those transfers. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. That's all that I have.
All right, then I've got two relatively quick items to close out. The first one is a resolution that's going to be at next week's meeting asking the board to approve the addition of a depository bank to our list of approved banks. So the Exhibit A is on the board there. These are all banks that have been approved by previous boards with a few exceptions. I'm really only adding one new bank, and that is First Mid Bank and Trust, which is at the bottom of the left-hand column. That bank is right across the street from our offices, and we have a need occasionally to get change. So we have customers that come in and bring big bills, and then we run out of change. It's much easier and safer for my staff to go across the street than to drive off somewhere with cash to get it exchanged at our main bank, which is US Bank. So we're just looking to be able to establish a relationship with the bank across the street. There is some cleanup on this page too. Just over the last few years, a number of these banks have been acquired or merged with other banks on the list, had some name changes because of those. So those updates are also reflected here, but no new banks are added except for First Mid Bank and Trust. Any questions on that one? And then we'll do the monthly operating fund portfolio. Interest rate market has been fun to watch over the last month or so. Been very volatile. So I'm going to start in the upper left. Total par of our portfolio, investment portfolio, is really within $1 million of where it was last month. So about $700,000 higher. Not much change there at all. But the yield to maturities have swung quite a bit. So our portfolio actually jumped over 30 basis points. So we're finally back up to 4%. And that was because some older, longer dated maturities that were invested when rates were really low have kind of sold off. We had end of last week, we had about 30 million of interest payments due on debt. So those maturities were timed to coincide with that need. Those are gone. And so that was a big jump in our portfolio. But actually the benchmark, remember that entire portfolio turns over every month. That jumped almost 50 basis points. So when the Fed cut rates, that was overnight rates fairly recently, the whole curve kind of shifted down, everything fell. But since then, except for overnight rates, most things have popped back up. So we've seen a big change in even 2- and 3-year treasuries all the way out to 30 years. So the benchmark actually jumped up over 40 basis points. That may come and settle down. Ours should be a little bit more stable because we only have a certain portion of ours turning over, but we should see probably a little bit of a tick up. Next week, we've got a good 50 million of SRF maturities coming in this month, and those will get invested. And that the way we invest those will probably also reflect the weighted average maturity, which is the next row down. Our portfolio stayed about the same. Benchmark went up, maybe 0.05 or so. So they're usually close to 2 years. We're usually close to a year. We're going to jump closer from low 80s to probably mid 90s next month. We invest some of these bond proceeds out to match some future debt service needs, probably in 27, because we have some needs there. And we can do that at rates over 4% right now. So that is probably what we're going to do with some of those bond proceeds. Sector allocation, there have been some minor changes, a little bit higher commercial paper. We're almost at our limit there. And that is offset by a reduction in the amount in U.S. Treasury bonds and Fed agencies, but we're all within compliance. Fund summary, not a lot of difference other than the yield to maturity on the operations account jumped up with the portfolio because that's where those funds were invested. And the maturity distribution is swinging around just by, 2 to 4 per category. So not big changes there. We probably next month will see a bigger change in the 2 to 3 years we move, maybe up to 50 million out to some 2027 maturity. So we'll see some swings in our portfolio there. But we're always a little bit different because our portfolio keeps a significant amount maturing in the next year because we have a lot of projects to pay for. And the benchmark is primarily in the 1 to 3 year treasuries. There are no questions. Trustee Evans, that is all I have for the Finance Committee today.
All right, next tentative meeting date is December 3rd. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome you to the November Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting. Might I get a roll call?
Yes, again, we will note that trustees Wabi, Evans, Watson, Wilson, and Nikozisson are all present, with trustee Nikozisson present online.
I have no comments. Can I get a motion to approve the committee minutes of October?
So move.
Second.
No objection? Minutes are approved. Move right into the meat. The IT folks.
Good morning,
Good
trustees.
morning. How are you today, Jay?
I am well. How are you? I just have one item today. It is a resolution to authorize the district to renew an annual contract with Rimini Street for $183,800. That's for security and support services for our legacy Oracle system, which, if you'll recall, we transitioned to Oracle Cloud or Oracle Fusion in early 23, fiscal year 23. This will allow us to work on the decommissioning of the existing legacy system while protecting and preserving the historical data as we do that. The contract will run from December of 24 to December of 25. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Coleman. How are you today?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much.
I just have to add one thing. Tracy became a grandmother the other day. Congratulations.
Thank you. I cannot be more excited. Thank you.
Explains the big smile this morning.
Yes, huge smile.
Just
Trustees.
This group elicited that. Congratulations.
No, thank you so much. Thank you. Trustees, I would like to bring your attention to proposed resolution 3928 for medical services for the district. Currently, that contract is held by BJC, and we're going into the 4th year of this particular contract. So when we initially ignited this contract, it was 1 year with 3 option years, and this is the last of the option years. Trustees, this budget is something that kind of varies. I mean, we do usually do a minimum $250,000 up to $500,000, depending on the usage of the services. But this contract covers medical services, workers' comp issues, and drug testing, pre-employment, post-accident drug testing. If approved, this will allow us to extend the contract for 1 additional year. And if you have any questions, this is going to expire. The current contract expires December 31st of 2024. And this will allow us to take the contract into 2025, and then we'll be seeking medical services through an RFP. Are there any questions? All right, well, thank you for your time.
Counselor, good morning.
Good morning, trustees. I have 3 topics to cover with you this morning. The first is, like the others, a renewal of an existing contract. This contract is with a law firm and a lawyer, Jonathan Beck of Beck, Dickhouse and Associates. They have been under contract with us. The contract we're in is from 2020. There were 4 option renewal years. This resolution would authorize us to enter into the 4th option year. Mr. Beck tracks sheriff's sales of real estate for us, tax sales of property, to enforce our lien and to collect any excess funds that remain after the unpaid taxes are paid. He also handles quiet title and foreclosure actions for us for a flat fee. And he does that to make sure that our lien remains even after the quiet title or foreclosure, or we get some money out of it. He gets on the excess funds, he gets a percentage. It's 15%. As I said, this is the last year, and that's that matter. The second matter I have is authorizing an ordinance for a new contract for lobbying services in the state of Missouri to monitor legislative activities that may impact MSD. Our existing contract expires in December. We put the services out for bid. And after the RFP process, staff selected the incumbent, which is Kina Iman LLC. Kina is an individual who operates as a certified women's business enterprise. Kina has been our state lobbyist for the past 18 legislative sessions. She knows MSD. She is extremely responsive, and she represents our interests in Jefferson City very well. In fact, Kina was here yesterday for a long meeting with some of us to review legislation that impacts us and our response to it in the next session. This will be a 1-year contract with up to 4 1-year renewal options, and the cost is increasing. Our current contract is $55,000 a year, and we're going up to $60,000 per year. I wanted to pass along that Kina sends her best regards. She would have liked to have been here this morning, as she has been when other contracts have been presented to you all, but she had already committed to work the polls this morning, so she couldn't join us. Any questions on that topic or on the Beck House contract?
Yes, counsel, I didn't see the number for Beck Council, this contract.
We pay him an per matter fee for the quiet title and the foreclosures of $400 each. So that's a per matter fee. And then on the excess funds, our fee is, I think it's 15.45% of the amounts he collects for us.
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you. I will move on then to our federal and state legislative priorities. This is for the coming legislative session. The priorities are developed by the senior team as part of the execution of our strategic business plan. It's strategy number 1, objective 2. They are developed and updated every year by senior management in consultation with our federal and state lobbyists. We discuss our needs, and the lobbyists provide their input on what they see on the horizon. The priorities we are presenting to you essentially carry over the priorities from 2024, but there have been a few updates. And I would like to review those briefly for you, the priorities. So on the state side, the priorities focus on, first and foremost, is always communication, maintaining good relationships and contact with our state legislative leaders and the governor's office. Once a year, typically, the senior group, executive director, general counsel, public affairs representative go to Jefferson City to meet with legislators. With our lobbyist, we identify, track, and influence where appropriate legislation in a number of categories of interest to MSD. Those include, but of course are not exclusively limited to, legislation that impacts us and our ratepayers, laws that could conflict with our charter, our pension plan, laws that could impact our ability to comply with the consent decree. From a financial standpoint, laws that impact our ability to collect payment for services related to ratepayers. That is the topic we met with KINA about yesterday to discuss that further, because there are some legislative changes in that area. Laws that could impact our tax revenue. We will also continue to focus on securing all available loan and grant funding from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, including state revolving fund loans, and to educate legislatures on funding available from the federal government and regulators. On the regulatory side, we will look at the Missouri Clean Water Commission and its membership criteria. We will also work with MSD stakeholders to monitor and advocate on regulations proposed by MDNR that affect the district. Items such as the definition of waters of the state and emerging contaminants like PFAS. This is a new one, or transformed from the one for last year. We will work to educate officials and their constituents on the outcome and impact of the April 2024 election and the funding of stormwater capital programs. If I could now turn to the federal level priorities. Again, first and foremost, focus on positive relationships. We'll have to establish and maintain, in at least one instance here. We will also monitor and influence, where appropriate, legislation that impacts us. This would include legislation concerning assistance to low-income ratepayers, topics such as environmental justice, PFAS, infrastructure, cybersecurity. We work with a national organization, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, on issues of importance to us. One of those is maintaining affordability of rates and the standards and criteria that go into that. We will continue to work to secure inclusion of MSD projects for funding under the Water Development Resources Act, or WRDA. And finally, we will always pay attention, and Tim will always pay close attention to laws that impact our tax, pension, IRS issues, things that would impact our employee benefit, retirement, and pension plans, as well as municipal bonds. That's the priorities is we wanted to present to you. As I said, this is an annual update to you. No board action is required. We don't need you to approve these. Certainly, I'm available. We're all available to answer any questions or to discuss these now or at any time throughout the year as they evolve and change. If not, then that's all I had. I appreciate your attention during the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. We have a requirement to go into closed session and to discuss legal, confidential, privileged matters under section 610, 21, subparagraph 1, and leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate by a public governmental body under section 61021, subsection 2. Can I get a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
All right, we're gonna do a
Get a motion to come out of closed session.
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're back in open session, which means we can adjourn.
Want to adjourn?
With no other business, take a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Thank you, folks. Been the pleasure of my life. Meeting is adjourned.